He called me the helper at his own wedding. My son. He looked right through me, then asked me to fetch more champagne for his new in-laws. They thought I was just an old mechanic, easily dismissed, easily broken. They were about to learn that you don't strip a man's gears and expect a smooth ride. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me back up and tell you how a wedding invitation became a declaration of war. My name is David Miller. It started 3 months ago. The invitation arrived in a thick, cream-colored envelope. It felt heavy, expensive. My son, Ethan, was getting married. The bride was Chloe Montgomery. The Montgomerys were old money, the kind of money that looks down on people who sweat for a living. I knew this wouldn't be a simple backyard barbecue, but I never expected it to be a public execution. The wedding day arrived. The grand ballroom smelled like lilies and cold cash. Chandeliers hung like giant diamonds, lighting up a room filled with people in suits that cost more than my mortgage payment. It was a spectacle, a beautiful, expensive lie. My wife, Sarah, stood beside me. She's the anchor of my life, the woman who stood by me through the lean years. Her hands have a slight tremor now. Stress, the doctors said. Worry. She wore a simple blue dress we picked out together. She looked beautiful and terrified. She was twisting her wedding ring, round and round, a nervous habit that always worried me. We were near the back, next to a marble pillar. It was freezing. I watched Ethan work the room. He was polished, sharp, ambitious. He looked like a stranger in his expensive tuxedo. When his eyes swept the crowd, they slid right over us, as if we were invisible, as if we weren't even there. That was the first sting, a sharp little needle prick to the heart, but it was just the beginning. The introductions began. The string quartet played loudly. The Montgomerys were announced with fanfare. Mr. Montgomery, a tall man who moved markets with a phone call. Mrs. Montgomery, draped in diamonds and arrogance. Ethan and Chloe made their grand entrance. They looked like movie stars. We waited for our names, the father and mother of the groom. The silence stretched. It grew awkward. Then the announcer moved on to the dinner service. We hadn't been introduced. We were just there. Spectators. Bystanders at our own son's wedding. Sarah squeezed my hand. Her tremor was getting worse. I could feel the panic rising in her, and the shame rising in me. Why was he hiding us? Sarah nudged me. Her voice was hopeful, but thin. Go say hello, David. He's probably just overwhelmed. He hasn't had a moment. I wanted to believe her. I always tried to see the good in Ethan. I adjusted my tie. My heart pounded. I just wanted to hug my son. I walked toward the head table, draped in gold cloth. It felt like walking the plank. Ethan and Chloe were laughing with her parents. Mr. Montgomery radiated power and contempt. He adjusted his expensive cufflinks constantly, a nervous tick of the wealthy. As I approached, the conversation died. A sudden, uncomfortable silence. Ethan saw me, for a second. I saw the boy I knew, the boy I taught to ride a bike. Then, his face went blank. A mask slid into place. He turned slightly, physically blocking me from Chloe's view. Ethan, I said softly. My voice was rough. He didn't look at me. He looked past my shoulder, toward a waiter carrying champagne. He avoided eye contact. He always did when he was ashamed, or when he was lying. The moment stretched. The silence was too loud. This was the first real betrayal. The moment the night fractured. It happened in slow motion. Ethan's jaw tightened. He glanced at Mr. Montgomery, then back toward the waiter. The air crackled with something ugly. He refused to acknowledge my presence. The silence was heavy, suffocating. "Excuse me," Ethan said. His voice was cold, formal, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Could we get more champagne over here? The Montgomerys' glasses are nearly empty." He wasn't talking to the waiter. He was talking to me. I froze. The music faded. All I heard was the blood rushing in my ears. He hadn't just ignored me. He had redefined me, in front of his new family, in front of his wealthy friends. I was no longer dad. I was staff. I was the help. I stood there, paralyzed. The humiliation burned up my neck, hot and searing. Ethan turned away, dismissing me completely. He resumed his conversation with Mr. Montgomery, as if I had never existed, as if I were nothing. I wasn't going to let him see me break. Not here, not now. I walked back to Sarah. My legs felt heavy, like I was wading through deep water. The journey across the ballroom felt endless. "What did he say?" she asked, her eyes searching my face, desperate for good news. He needed more champagne," I lied. I couldn't tell her. Not yet. I couldn't bear to see the hurt in her eyes. I couldn't admit that our son had just publicly disowned us. But the real betrayal was still waiting in the shadows. The tension began to build after that, brick by heavy brick, walling us off from the celebration. First, it was the seating arrangement. We searched the chart near the entrance. We weren't at the family tables. We weren't even close. We found our names on a small card. Table 24, tucked away in the far corner of the ballroom, right next to the swinging kitchen doors and the service exit. Every time a waiter burst through, we were hit with a blast of noise and the smell of roasting meat. It was the worst seat in the house, and it was intentional. The centerpiece on our table was smaller, an afterthought. We shared the table with distant cousins of the bride who regarded us with polite confusion. "It's quiet back here," Sarah said, trying to smile. Her voice trembled, less overwhelming. I squeezed her hand under the table. This wasn't an oversight. This was intentional isolation. Ethan was putting us in our place, and that place was the servants' quarters. Then came the comments. The first course arrived, some kind of fancy soup that tasted like lukewarm seawater. Chloe's mother, Mrs. Montgomery, drifted around the room, surveying her kingdom. She was a tall woman with hair sprayed into an impenetrable helmet. Her voice could cut glass. She stopped near our table. Her eyes scanned us with barely concealed disgust. She looked down her nose at us, a gesture of pure contempt. She zeroed in on my suit. It was new, the best I could afford. But it wasn't Italian silk. This insult wasn't quick. It was slow torture. Mrs. Montgomery paused. She tilted her head, examining my suit like a scientist examining a bug. The people at the next table quieted down, eager for the drama. She sniffed the air, as if she smelled something unpleasant. "Such interesting fabric," she remarked loudly to the woman next to her, not looking at me, but ensuring I heard every word. "It's almost quaint. So refreshing to see people keeping things simple these days. It's a charming reminder of where we came from, isn't it?" The woman next to her tittered, a sharp, ugly sound like breaking china. My face burned. I wanted to tell her that this quaint fabric was bought with money earned through hard, honest labor, the kind of labor that kept her luxury car running smoothly. I gripped my fork until my knuckles turned white. I stayed silent. I told myself I was being too sensitive. I wouldn't ruin Ethan's day. I was trying to protect him. But who was protecting me? Who was protecting Sarah? The third brick was the family photographs. The photographer was corralling the Montgomerys, and Ethan near the massive floral arch. They posed, smiling brightly, a picture-perfect family. The flashbulbs popped, capturing the illusion. I waited for the photographer to call us over. I waited for Ethan to look for us, to acknowledge us. He never did. They finished the session and moved on to the dance floor. We were excluded, cut out of the frame, erased from the visual history of the day. Sarah looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring faster now. "They must be doing our side of the family later," she whispered. Her voice was barely audible. I knew they weren't. The erasure was deliberate, and it was almost complete. I thought it couldn't get any worse. I was wrong. That's when my sister Janice appeared at our table. Janice was always the outspoken one in the family. She wore a bright red dress and a cynical expression. She hugged Sarah tightly. "You okay, sweetie? You look pale." "I'm fine, Janice," Sarah murmured, avoiding eye contact. Janice looked at me, her eyes sharp and knowing. "Table 24, huh, David? Classy, real classy." She leaned in closer, lowering her voice. "I warned you about him, didn't I? I told you his ambition would swallow him whole, and you along with him." "Not now, Janice," I whispered, glancing nervously at the surrounding tables. "He's just stressed. That's a big day." Janice snorted. "Stressed? He's cruel, David. He always has been. You just refuse to see it?" She walked away, leaving a trail of expensive perfume and unspoken truths behind her. Her words stung, because a part of me knew she was right, and I was terrified of what that meant. The final brick, the rising tension, was the parent dances. Ethan and Chloe shared their first dance under the spotlight. They looked beautiful. They looked happy. They looked like a perfect couple. Then the announcer called for the mother-son dance. I held my breath. Ethan walked over to our table. He didn't smile. He didn't say anything. He offered Sarah his arm, mechanically, like a robot, like it was a chore. He led her to the dance floor. The song was short, maybe 2 minutes long, but it felt like an eternity. He held her stiffly, at arm's length, as if afraid her simplicity might rub off on him, as if her tremor was contagious. His eyes constantly scanned the room, checking who was watching, performing for the crowd. He didn't look at her. He didn't say a word. As soon as the music faded, he escorted her back to the table, dropped her hand, and walked away without a glance in my direction. There was no father-daughter dance equivalent for me. I remained seated, invisible, useless. The man who paid for his education, the man who taught him how to drive, the man who loved him unconditionally. Invisible. Sarah sat down, her eyes shining with unshed tears. The tremor in her hands was worse now. He's just nervous, David. It's a big day. So much pressure. My patience was gone. The suit, the seating, the coldness, the erasure, it was all adding up. Ethan wasn't just nervous. He was cruel, and the cruelty was about to become undeniable. A loud laugh erupted from a nearby table. I looked over and saw a group of Ethan's college friends. They were drunk, loud, and obnoxious. One of them, a guy named Robert, stumbled over to our table. He was holding a glass of whiskey, sloshing it onto the expensive carpet. Hey, you're Ethan's parents, right? Robert slurred, squinting at us. I recognize you from the pictures. I was confused. What pictures? We hadn't taken any. Yeah, that's us, I said cautiously. Robert laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Man, I gotta say, Ethan is a legend. The way he climbed the ladder, incredible. He leaned in, conspiratorially, his breath hot and sour with alcohol, especially after what happened to you guys. What are you talking about? I asked, my blood running cold. Robert looked surprised. You know, the accident? The fire? Stared at him, speechless. Ethan told us you guys passed away when he was in college. Robert continued, oblivious to the bomb he had just dropped. Said he had to make it on his own. Tragic story. Really motivated him, you know. The words hit me like a physical blow. Passed away? He told people we were dead? The betrayal was deeper than I ever imagined. He hadn't just hidden us. He hadn't just been ashamed of us. He had killed us off, erased us completely from his narrative. I looked at Sarah. Her face was ashen. The realization dawned on her too, and it was devastating. We were ghosts at our own son's wedding. Ghosts he had created. The depth of his cruelty was staggering, and it was about to be exposed. The first major betrayal came during the speeches. The moment the rupture became public, the best man spoke first. Charming stories about Ethan's college days, days I had financed by taking out a second mortgage on our house when his scholarship didn't cover everything. I listened, my stomach twisting into knots. The revisionist history was sickening. Then Chloe's father, Mr. Montgomery, took the microphone. He stood tall, commanding the room. His voice boomed with confidence. He owned the space. He owned the moment. He spoke about legacy, about family tradition, about building an empire. And he spoke about Ethan. This wasn't just a speech. It was an assassination. Mr. Montgomery raised his glass. The crystal caught the light. He looked at Ethan with pride. The kind of pride I used to feel. We are so proud to welcome Ethan into our family, he heaved. And more importantly, into our firm, the prestigious investment firm that Ethan had been desperate to join. He paused for effect. Ethan is a remarkable young man, self-made, driven, and brilliant. He achieved success entirely on his own merit, overcoming obstacles that would have broken a lesser man. He fits the Montgomery mold perfectly. Self-made. The words hit me like a physical blow. They echoed in the vast ballroom. I looked at Sarah. She was staring down at her plate, her shoulders shaking silently. My ears rang. For a second I forgot how to breathe. Self-made. What about the 35 years I spent building my business? Miller and Son Mechanics. The son part was always a hope, a legacy. What about the late nights, the missed holidays, the constant worry? What about the time I sold my vintage motorcycle, the only luxury I ever allowed myself to cover his first apartment in the city? What about the sacrifices Sarah made, working part-time even when her health was failing, just so we could afford his expensive tastes? His designer shoes, his ambition, all erased. With one word, Ethan stood up, accepting the applause, basking in the glow of the lie. He looked so proud, he thanked the Montgomerys profusely for their guidance, their mentorship, their belief in him. He thanked his professors. He thanked his new wife, and then he sat down. He never mentioned us. He never acknowledged our presence in the room. He never even glanced toward our corner. We were completely, utterly erased. It wasn't an oversight. It was an embarrassment. It was a calculated deletion of his past. He had sacrificed us for his future, and we were the collateral damage. But the worst was yet to come. The breaking point arrived with the main course, the moment when the weight of it all became too much to bear. The humiliation escalated from subtle insults to open, unnecessary cruelty. We were eating in silence. The food was exquisite, I suppose. Filet mignon and lobster. It tasted like ash in my mouth. The celebration around us felt distant, surreal. Sarah's tremor was making it difficult for her to differ. She was trying to cut her steak, but her hand shook violently. Her knife scraped loudly against the porcelain plate. The sound was sharp, cutting through the polite chatter. People started to stare, their expressions shifting from curiosity to annoyance. She was embarrassed, trying to be discreet. He reached over to help her. "Here, love, let me take care of that." But before I could, a shadow fell over our table. It was Ethan. I felt a surge of hope. Maybe he had realized his mistake. Maybe he had come to apologize, to check on his mother. I was so wrong. He didn't look at Sarah. He didn't look at me. His face was tight with anger, his eyes cold and hard. He signaled to the event coordinator, a stressed woman with a headset named Miss Evans. She was hovering nearby, trying to keep the event running smoothly. This betrayal was the one that broke the dam. Ethan stared at Sarah's plate, not at her face, at the plate, as if it were a disgusting mess. He held up a hand, silencing Miss Evans before she could even speak. The air around us grew cold. I saw the contempt in his eyes, pure, unfiltered contempt. "Excuse me," Ethan said, his voice low but sharp, dripping with impatience. "Can you do something about this? The noise is disturbing the guests at table 23. It's unacceptable." He pointed at Sarah. "Perhaps you can clear her plate early. And please ensure the staff keeps the noise level down in this area." He didn't ask if she was okay. He didn't offer assistance. He treated his mother, struggling with a physical ailment, like a nuisance, a disturbance, an embarrassment. Sarah's face crumpled. A tear escaped and rolled down her cheek. That silence cut deeper than any word. Miss Evans apologized profusely to Ethan. "Of course, sir. My apologies. We'll handle it immediately." Ethan walked away without another word. Back to the head table. Back to the laughter. Back to his perfect new life. Sarah placed her napkin on the table, her hands trembling uncontrollably now. "I think I'd like to go home, David," she whispered, her voice broken. "I don't feel well. I don't belong here." That was the moment something inside me shattered. The years of quiet suffering, the silent sacrifices, the unconditional love, it all broke apart. The weight of all the insults, the lies, the cold indifference, it crashed down on me. Seeing her pain, realizing that my silence was only enabling this cruelty, it broke me. I had sacrificed everything for him, only to see him spit on our efforts. I realized things could not continue this way. My dignity, and more importantly, Sarah's dignity, demanded action. And in that moment of crisis, the hidden truth I hadn't wanted to face suddenly became crystal clear. Ethan's behavior wasn't just about social climbing. It wasn't just about shame. It was deeper, more calculated, more manipulative, and it involved a secret that threatened to destroy us. The realization hit me like a freight train. Ethan hadn't just wanted to join the Montgomery family. He needed to. He needed to secure a junior partnership in their prestigious investment firm. And that partnership required capital, a significant buy-in. A few months ago, Ethan had come to me. Desperate. He needed $250,000 to finalize the deal. I remember that day clearly. It was raining. He showed up at the shop, wearing an expensive coat, looking panicked. "It's the opportunity of a lifetime, Dad," he had pleaded. His voice urgent, persuasive. "Mr. Montgomery is mentoring me. This is my shot. I'll pay you back with interest as soon as the deal closes." He avoided eye contact then too. I should have known. I didn't have that kind of cash. My savings were modest, but I did have the auto shop. I owned the building and the land it sat on. Free and clear, it was my life's work, my retirement security, my everything, against my better judgment, against the little voice in my head warning me that something wasn't right. I did it. I loved him. I trusted him. I took out a massive loan against my business, leveraging everything I had built over 35 years, to give him that money. I hadn't told Sarah the full amount. I didn't want her to worry. Her health was too fragile. I told her it was a small loan from our savings. The weight of that secret pressed down on me now, heavy and suffocating. Now, sitting in the corner of that ballroom, watching my wife cry, the truth hit me with sickening clarity. Ethan wasn't just embarrassed by us. He needed the Montgomerys to believe he was self-made, to justify his position, to make him seem worthy of their daughter and their firm. He had used my sacrifice to buy his way into a world where I didn't belong. And now he was slamming the door shut behind him. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was financial. It was strategic. It was a calculated deception that threatened to ruin us. If I didn't get that money back, we would lose the shop. We would lose everything. The transformation began then. The hurt, bewildered father disappeared. In his place was a man who had been pushed too far, a man who realized he was in a fight for his life. I looked at my wife, the woman who had loved that boy more than anything, who had sacrificed her own dreams for his. I knew I wasn't going to just leave. I wasn't going to let them dismiss us. I wasn't going to let them break her heart. I wasn't going to let them steal my life's work. "No, Sarah," I said quietly, my voice steady, calm, but with an edge of steel I hadn't heard in years. I wiped the tear from her cheek. "We're not leaving. Not yet." I needed a plan. I couldn't just explode. I needed leverage, and I needed help. I excused myself from the table. I walked past the kitchen doors, out into the service hallway. The noise of the party faded. I pulled out my phone. I needed to talk to someone who understood money and betrayal. I called Mark Rossi, my lawyer, and one of the few honest men I knew. "David, it's nearly 10 o'clock. Mark answered, his voice gruff. "Isn't the wedding tonight?" "It is," I said, my voice cold, "and I think I'm witnessing a robbery in progress." I told Mark everything. The insults, the self-made lie, the parents are dead lie, and the $250,000 loan. Mark listened in silence. "Did you have him sign a promissory note?" Mark asked, his voice sharp. "All business?" "Yes, I insisted on it," I said. He fought me on it, said it was unnecessary between family. But I wouldn't budge. "Good," Mark said. "That gives us leverage. That note is callable on demand. But David, if you want to do this, you have to be prepared for the fallout. It will be messy. It will be ugly." "My life is already ugly, Mark," I said. "I want my money back. And I want my dignity back." Mark paused. "Okay, I've got your back. But you need more than just the money, David. You need to expose the lie. You need to burn it all down." He was right. But how? I went back into the ballroom. The party was in full swing. The band was playing a loud jazz number. People were dancing, laughing, oblivious to the drama unfolding in the corner. I needed to understand the full scope of Ethan's deception. I needed to know if the Montgomerys were in on it. I saw Mr. Montgomery holding court near the bar. He was surrounded by his wealthy friends, laughing loudly, boasting about Ethan's bright future. I walked over to the bar. I needed to get close enough to hear. I ordered a club soda. I stood near a pillar, pretending to watch the band, but I was listening. "Remarkable kid," Mr. Montgomery was saying, adjusting his cufflinks again. Came to me with a brilliant proposal, and the capital to back it up. All his own money, from a trust fund his grandparents left him. Incredible discipline. Trust fund? Ethan didn't have a trust fund. His grandparents were blue-collar workers, just like me. The lie was deeper than I thought. Ethan hadn't just omitted the truth. He had actively lied about the source of the money. He had created a false narrative, a fantasy, and the Montgomerys believed it. Or maybe they didn't care. I felt a presence beside me. It was Leo, my oldest employee. He had worked at the shop for 20 years. He was like family. I had invited him to the wedding. He was also seated at table 24. Leo was a quiet man, observant. He saw everything. "Rough night, boss," Leo said, swirling his drink. "You have no idea, Leo," I muttered. "Ethan seems to have forgotten where he came from," Leo said, his eyes fixed on the dance floor. "But I remember the late nights you worked, the vacations you skipped, the sacrifices you made." He turned to me. His eyes were sad. "He used to be a good kid, David. What happened to him?" "Ambition," I said. "Greed, and the Montgomerys." Leo nodded slowly. "You know, I saw something interesting a few months ago," he said quietly. "Ethan came by the shop. When you weren't there, he was looking through the files. The financial records. He said he was helping you with something." I froze. I hadn't asked him to do anything. "What was he looking for?" I asked, my voice tight. "I'm not sure," Leo said. "But he seemed very interested in the property deeds, the valuation of the shop. He asked me how much I thought the land was worth." The pieces clicked into place. A sickening realization. Ethan hadn't just needed the loan, he needed to know how much I was worth. How much he could squeeze out of me. He was planning this all along. The betrayal wasn't impulsive. It was premeditated. If this story is keeping you hooked, drop a like. It was that moment. I realized I wasn't just fighting for my dignity. I was fighting for my survival. The depth of his deception was staggering. He had built a house of cards, a fragile illusion of wealth and success. And I was the foundation he was trying to bury. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't just recall the loan privately. I had to expose the lie publicly. I had to dismantle his perfect life, piece by piece. The transformation was complete. I was no longer the victim. I was the reckoning. I walked back to table 24. Sarah looked up at me, her eyes filled with worry. She saw the change in my face. The cold fury. "What are you going to do, David?" she asked. "I'm going to fix this," I said. "Or maybe I'm going to break it completely." I started walking toward the stage. The band was taking a short break. The microphone stood unattended at the podium. Bathed in a soft spotlight, the room was buzzing with conversation, the air filled with the sound of wealth, congratulating itself. As I walked through the tables, people noticed. They saw the man from table 24, the one in the quaint suit, the one who didn't belong. Heading toward the front, the whispers started, a ripple of confusion spreading through the room. I reached the podium. I tapped the microphone. The sharp feedback echoed through the ballroom, silencing the conversations instantly. Ethan looked up from the head table, confusion quickly turning to alarm. He stood up, his chair scraping against the marble floor. Chloe looked horrified. The Montgomerys stared at me with open disdain, as if I were a cockroach crawling across their expensive carpet. It was time to turn the lights on. The climax wasn't just a speech. It was a demolition. "Good evening, everyone," I said, my voice calm and clear. It carried through the silence, strong and steady. "I apologize for the interruption. I know I'm not on the schedule, but I haven't had a chance to make a toast yet. My name is David Miller." I paused, letting the name hang in the air. "I am Ethan's father. A few gasps echoed around the room. Robert, the drunk friend, shouted from his table, "I thought he was dead." The silence that followed was absolute and delicious. The illusion began to crack. It's truly wonderful to see so many people here celebrating this union. I continued, looking directly at the Montgomerys. Their faces were turning red. When you raise a child, you hope they find happiness. You hope they find success. You hope they remember where they came from. I turned to Ethan. His face was a mask of panic, his eyes pleading with me to stop, pleading with me to keep his secret. Too late. Tonight, my wife and I were seated at table 24, next to the kitchen, I went on, my voice rising with emotion. We were ignored. We were mocked for our clothes. My son pretended I was the staff. He treated his mother, who was unwell, like a nuisance. The room was dead silent. The discomfort was palpable. Ethan flinched, as if I had struck him. "Which brings me to a small announcement," I said, my voice cold and hard, a sort of wedding gift, if you will. I looked Ethan straight in the eye. His face was ashen. He knew what was coming. "Ethan, you know that $250,000 investment I made a few months ago? The capital you needed to secure your partnership at the Montgomery firm. The money you claimed was from your grandparents' trust fund." The mention of the trust fund made Mr. Montgomery sit up straight. His expression darkened, realization dawning on his face. "The money I raised by leveraging my auto shop," I clarified. "The business I spent 35 years building. I've decided that the terms of that investment are no longer agreeable," I announced calmly, my voice booming with authority. "You see, I realized I was investing in a lie. A cruel, selfish lie." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. "As of 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, I am officially withdrawing my support and recalling the loan in full. I expect the money back in my account within 24 hours. My lawyer, Mark Rossi, has the paperwork ready." The implication was clear. Without that capital, the partnership was void. Ethan's career, his reputation, his future, crumbled. But I wasn't finished. I had one more nail for the coffin. I was going to burn it all down. "And the condo you've been living in downtown," I continued, my voice relentless. "The luxury apartment with the view of the city. The one titled in the name of Miller and Son Mechanics." Ethan stumbled back, grabbing the table for support. "I'm putting it on the market immediately. You have 30 days to vacate." I had taken away his job security and the roof over his head in less than 2 minutes. The explosion was spectacular. Chloe burst into tears, her face contorted in rage and disbelief. "Ethan, what has he done? You told me you were rich. You told me you had a trust fund." Her high-pitched laugh was gone, replaced by a shrill scream. Mrs. Montgomery looked like she was having a heart attack. Mr. Montgomery stood up, sputtering, his face purple with fury. "How dare you? This is outrageous. You can't do this. We have a contract." "Oh, but I can," I said calmly. "The contract was based on fraud. The promissory note is between Ethan and me, and it's due. It's my money, my sacrifice, my life." I looked at my son one last time. He was standing alone now, abandoned by his new family. His perfect life shattered around him. He looked broken. I felt a pang of sadness, for the boy he used to be, but not for the man he had become. "Congratulations on your marriage, Ethan and Chloe," I concluded. "I wish you all the happiness you truly deserve, and I hope, Ethan, that you now finally understand what it means to be self-made." I placed the microphone back on the podium and walked off the stage. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Guests were shouting. Cameras were flashing. The Montgomerys were screaming at Ethan. The glittering facade had shattered, revealing the ugly truth beneath. I walked back to table 24. Janice was grinning ear to ear. Leo nodded at me, a look of deep respect in his eyes. Sarah was standing, her eyes wide, but her tremor had stopped. A small, fierce smile played on her lips. She looked strong. She looked proud. "Let's go home, David," she said, her voice clear and firm. I took her arm. We walked out of the ballroom. We didn't look back at the wreckage we left behind. We walked out the front door, leaving the glittering chandeliers and the horrified faces behind. The cool night air felt refreshing. The weight that had been pressing down on my chest was gone. I felt lighter, I felt free. The fallout was immediate and devastating. As we waited for the valet to bring our old, reliable sedan around, we heard the shouting from inside the ballroom. It sounded like a war had started. We drove home in comfortable silence. The next morning, Mark Rossi called. The money was back in my account by 4 p.m. Ethan hadn't fought it. He had nothing left to fight with. In the weeks that followed, the story spread through the city's elite circles. Ethan's carefully constructed image crumbled. The partnership at the Montgomery firm was revoked before it even started. Mr. Montgomery, embarrassed and furious, wanted nothing to do with the mechanic's son who had deceived him. Chloe annulled the marriage within a month. She wasn't interested in a life of struggle. She wanted the fantasy, not the reality. She wanted the image, not the man. Ethan called me a few days after the wedding, furious, desperate. "How could you do that to me?" he screamed into the phone. "You ruined my life. In front of everyone. I lost everything." "No, Ethan," I said calmly. "You ruined your own life. I just took back what was mine. I financed your dreams, but I will not finance my own humiliation." "But I'm your son," he pleaded, his voice breaking. "You stopped being my son when you told the world we were dead," I said, my voice cold. "You stopped being my son when you treated your mother like a nuisance. Respect is non-negotiable." He tried to argue, to plead, to threaten, but I was done. I hung up the phone. Life moved on. It wasn't easy, but it was real. I used the recalled money to pay off the loan against the shop and invested the rest into Sarah's medical care. We found a new specialist, a good one. Her condition improved. The tremor lessened. Her smile returned. We still have the auto shop. I changed the name, though. It's just Miller Mechanics now. The son part is gone, painted over with a fresh coat of blue paint. Leo is now my partner, a real partner. Sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet, I think about Ethan. I wonder where he is, what he's doing. I heard rumors from Janice that he moved to another city, working a low-paying job, trying to rebuild his life from scratch. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh. But then I remembered the sound of the knife scraping against Sarah's plate. The cold indifference in my son's eyes. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh. But then I remembered the sound of the knife scraping against Sarah's plate. The cold indifference in my son's eyes. The silent tears running down my wife's face. And the lie that he wished us dead. And I know I did the right thing. Last night, Sarah and I had dinner on our small patio. The air was cool. The stars were bright. We were laughing, truly laughing. It was a simple moment, but it felt richer than any crystal chandelier or gold-draped table. I lost a son that day, but I found my dignity. I found my self-respect. I found peace. I realized that the true value of a life isn't measured in dollars, social status, or prestigious partnerships. It's measured in love, loyalty, and the respect you show the people who built you up. Ethan wanted to be self-made. Now he has his chance, and I have my life back. Thanks for listening. Please rate our story in the comments. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot, because your time matters.